Hello and welcome to the Military History Club's Great Battle in 10 Minutes feature. Today I'm talking about Operation Cobra, the pivotal battle fought between the US First Army and the German Seventh Army near St. Lo in Normandy from the 25th to the 31st of July 1944. It ended in a complete rupture of the German defences around the D-Day beachhead and led, 3 weeks later, to the decisive Allied victory in the Battle for Normandy. By mid-July 1944, 5 weeks into the D-Day campaign, the Allies were still struggling to break out of their Normandy beachhead. But General Sir Bernard Montgomery, the Allied ground forces commander, was in no mood to alter his original strategy. To use the British Second Army to draw the bulk of the German panzers to the eastern flank of the beachhead, while the American First Army broke through the more thinly defended positions to the west. He therefore launched Operation Goodwood on the 18th of July, an attempt by 3 British armoured divisions to pierce German defences east of the River Orne, outflanked Caen and occupied the Borquebus Ridge. The attack was only partially successful and was closed down a day later, yet it led to the capture of Caen and, as Monty had hoped, the committal of all German panzer reserves to the British front. 6 days later, Omar Bradley, commanding the US First Army, unleashed Operation Cobra, an attack on a narrow front of the German line west of St. Lo by 4 infantry and 2 armoured divisions of Joe Collins's 8th Corps. It was preceded by a massive 2-hour air bombardment of German positions by 2,430 Allied planes, using a mixture of high explosive and fragmentation ordnance. The bombing would be supported by ground fire equivalent to 90 battalions of field artillery, making it the most concentrated bombardment ever used on such a narrow area. Once the ground troops had kicked off, they would be supported by P-47 Thunderbolts, guided to their targets by pilots using VHF radios and acting as forward air controllers in the lead tank of every armoured column, an innovation suggested by Major General Pete Quesada of the 9th Air Force Tactical Command and rubber-stamped by Bradley. Some of the armoured division's M5 Stuart light tanks were also equipped with rhinos, steel forks welded to the front, the joint design of an American staff sergeant and a lieutenant that could easily slice through the thick hedgerows that littered the terrain and, hitherto, had made manoeuvring so difficult. In the event, many of the bombs fell short, killing 111 American soldiers and wounding 490. Among the fatalities was Lieutenant General Leslie McNair, who was observing the attack. McNair became the joint highest Allied rank to be killed in action during the war. Yet overall, the bombardment did its job. Bombs buried men and equipment, noted Martin Blumenson, the author of the US Army Official History, overturned tanks, cut telephone wires, broke radio antennas, sent messengers fleeing for their foxholes or the nearest crater. Communications with forward echelons were completely disrupted. The bombardment transformed the main line of resistance from a familiar paysage into a frightening landscape of the moon. By evening, 3 American infantry divisions had created a salient 3 miles wide and from 1 to 3 miles deep that had not yet been sealed off. As of this moment, reported German Commander Gunther von Kluge, the front has burst. Next morning, suspecting that the main line of resistance had been breached, Collins sent forward his reserves. The veteran 1st Infantry Division and 2 heavy armoured divisions, the 2nd and 3rd, each equipped with 390 tanks. Faced with increasingly stiff opposition from the German 353rd Infantry Division and 2 companies of the 2nd SS Panzer Division, the 3rd Armoured Division had only got as far as the northern edge of the village of Marigny by nightfall. To the east, however, the 2nd Armoured Division, supported by a regiment from the 4th Infantry Division, made much better progress by capturing Saint-Gilles by mid-afternoon. At one point, emphasizing the value of forward air observers in tanks, an airstrike by P-47 Thunderbolts destroyed 4 panzers and a self-propelled gun that were holding up the advance. The capture of Saint-Gilles by Combat Command A of the 2nd Armoured Division under Assistant Division Commander Brigadier General Maurice Rose was the breakthrough that Bradley and Collins had been hoping for. There was no longer any doubt, noted Blumenson, that the German line had definitely been penetrated. The exploitation phase began immediately, and by midnight on the 26th of July, with Rose driving his men forward, tanks and infantry had advanced a further 5 miles south from Saint-Gilles to reach high ground that commanded an extensive network of roads. The next morning, Rose's men completed the capture of Les Mesnil-Urmas and Hill 183. In just 2 days, Rose's CCA had advanced more than 9 miles for the cost of just 200 men, 3 medium tanks, and 2 small trucks. Meanwhile, Middleton's 8th Corps had begun its advance to the right or west of Collins' Corps on the 26th, making it more important than ever that Hubner captured Marigny and began the thrust to Coutances in the west that was intended to cut off German troops facing Middleton. In the morning of the 27th of July, understanding the vital importance of the westward sickle stroke, Hubner gambled by unleashing the tanks of 3rd Armoured Division CCB before his infantry had captured Marigny. His boldness paid off, and by the end of the day, both Marigny and Campron, a hilltop village halfway to Coutances, were in his possession. That night, having narrowly evaded capture when German tanks surrounded his command post near Soule, south of Marigny, General Bayerlein radioed General Dietrich von Choltitz, the commander of the German 84th Corps, that his Panzer-Lehr division was destroyed and he had nothing left to lead. A day later, elements of the 1st Infantry Division and the CCB continued their advance to the high ground north of Coutances, but too late to trap the German 84th Corps, which had withdrawn to the south. The bulk of the Germans, wrote Blumenson, by escaping the 8th Corps main effort, had slipped through the Cobra noose. That evening, a delighted Bradley informed General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Supreme Commander, that First Army was riding high and things on its front looked really good. Montgomery was more explicit. On west flank, he told Ike, the battle is going splendidly, and Bradley's troops are in Coutances. It begins to look as if the general plan on which we have been working so long is at last going to pay a dividend. He went on to explain that, to prevent the Germans from moving any panzers up Caen westward to the American sector, he had instructed Dempsey to advance to 30 July, the date of 30 Corps' attack south from Caumont to Montpinçon, otherwise known as Operation Bluecoat, in support of the US 5th Corps, and to throw all caution overboard and to take any risks he likes. On the 29th of July, elated by the news, Eisenhower flew to Normandy to check on First Army's progress and to extend congratulations to Bradley and Montgomery. Gone was the gloom and dejection of a few days past, wrote Bradley. The world-famous Eisenhower grin was now in evidence, with perhaps some relief. Only George S. Patton of the Third Army was concerned. Bradley certainly has done a good job, he told Ike. My only kick is that he will win the war before I get in. There was little chance of that. On the 30th of July, the 4th and 6th Armoured Divisions of Middleton's 8th Corps, now attached to Patton's Third Army, reached Avranches at the base of the Cotentin Peninsula. The Germans, noted Bradley, now completely routed, retreated in haste or surrendered. The following day, urged on by Patton, the advanced elements of Middleton's 8th Corps burst through the Avranches bottleneck by crossing the Saloon River into Brittany. One motorized column headed south for Rouen, the other west for Brest. Compared to war, noted Patton in his diary, all other human activities are futile if you like war as I do. The Germans tried to stem the breakout by launching a counter-offensive of their own, Operation Liège, on the 7th of August, but it was a costly failure, and within a few days the Allies had trapped the bulk of the German 7th Army in the Falaise pocket. On the 19th of August, the pocket was cleared, and the battle for Normandy was finally over. It had been, wrote Monty, a definite, complete and decisive victory. Only 50,000 German troops and 24 tanks had escaped the pocket. 2 whole armies, the 7th and 5th Panzer, had been effectively destroyed, including many of the German Heer's best trained and equipped Panzer and Panzer Grenadier divisions.